couple of months ago, I uploaded a short showing all these synths working together, which isn't often the case as the studio is always in a state of flux. I just installed this, it's the Gridlock 2, and I was showing that all my vintage non-MIDI CV synths were as integrated as all the modern kit. Just select it in the DAW like any other MIDI instrument and it's there. It's amazingly useful. But a lot of people asked if I could show more of the studio and how it's set up. So here we are, a quickish run through of what I've got in here and how it's all connected. And also how I'm clinging on for dear life to how the studio's given me an extremely tenuous connection to Charlie's Theron. But it's worth noting that it's not a static thing, the studio. This is constantly changing. Obviously, I'm putting stuff on video all the time. So over there, for example, I've got a Jupiter 4 that's just come in after being repaired. That's where my Summit normally sits. So that's swapped out today. And I've got a lot of bits and bobs in storage. So a lot of vintage kit, like I think Poly 6, DX7, DW8000, JX8P, and loads of other little bits and bobs that aren't in here, but I do get out every now and then when I fancy a little play with them, so I can just take something off and plug something else in, which is sometimes, obviously, you don't plug it back in, and it just sits there, and this just becomes like a storage rack. So, yeah, I got it all working and I was very pleased with it. But it started out back in the 80s actually. I've got, just sitting under there, I've got my original Alpha Juno tour board back in the 80s, and I still use it with the retroactive kit, so I can leave that sat behind my Korg SV1 piano and play with that retroactive controller and not even look at the Juno. So I've got stuff in here that I've had in here for years and every other room I've been in. So yeah, it does change. I did have at one stage the Mackie 8 bus with the 24 expander, and that looked, Sidecar it was called, and that looked absolutely fantastic. It was a brilliant bit of kit, but I found out after, or realised after a few years, I was only ever using channels 1 and 2 because I wasn't playing everything together, because obviously you record it all in your DAW. So it was a transition from having a big studio with a big desk into just getting myself this. It's the Neve 8816 Summer Mixer, and I got this because I didn't want to move from having a really nice desk into something really cheap. I thought with the proceeds from that, I'll treat myself to something really nice. And this is a really nice mixer. On the right-hand side there, you've got all the controls that you'd have on a big mixing console. So it's a really handy bit of kit. But you just don't have lots of EQs and compressors in line or attached to it because you don't really need them these days. You definitely don't need like 54 of them on one desk. And of course, back then I had all the Akai samplers, all the standard stuff you see from the 90s. Used to make tracks with the Akai samplers, Supernova, the Juno 2 still, and all sorts of those bits that you see all over the place. I've still got the Microwave XT actually. And I bought that and the 8 bus from the same place, from Studio K in Liverpool. And the 8 bus was actually the same mixing console they did the music for Lock, Stock and Two Smoking Barrels on the Guy Ritchie movie, because the guys that did that had a studio in Liverpool, and after that they then moved to LA and they sold that to Studio K, and I bought it off them. So I do have a very tenuous link to Charlie's Theron via Studio K, Lock, Stock and Two Smoking Barrels, Jason Statham, who starred with Charlie's Theron in The Italian Job, who appeared in Trapped with none other than the legend that is Kevin Bacon. Possibly the most tenuous 6 degrees of separation you've ever seen. Starting off with what's in the back of the shot here. On the top left here, got the ARPAX. This is a monosynth. It's got a single oscillator, but it packs a lot of punch. Really nice for bass. I've got the Odyssey over there, but there's something about that for sort of just a single, simple sound. It's really nice. Next to that, we've got the Promars, and this is really interesting. It's a monosynth. It's got presets. But even though it's a monosynth with a single oscillator, it's actually got 2 oscillators in there, so you can detune them and get really fat sounding things off it. And you can see it's like the precursor to the Jupiter 4. Or maybe the Jupiter 4 came before this. I'd have to look that up, to be honest. But it's just a nice big fat thing. And I got this because a friend of mine was selling it and I couldn't let it go. Below that, I've got the Analog Rhythm. I had that for years. I bought that when it first came out, actually. I sold my Electron machine drum to buy that, and that got nicked in the post. I got my money back, but yeah, somebody somewhere has actually got my Electron machine drum, which is in perfect condition. Then just a few little rack units here, a few little Eurorack bits and bobs. I use this little skiff. It's actually one of the Moog skips, and I've just got a little tip-top power supply in there, and I use this for videos, for bits and bobs, just nice and small, nice to be able to stick on the camera. Next to that is the Super 8. These UDO synths are lovely. You might have seen my video I released last week or whenever it was with this versus the Jupiter 8. It's just got a really nice feel. The interface is great. You know, it's a cool looking synth. And it reminded me, at this size, bigger than the Super 6, it reminded me of my Jupiter 6. It's even got, I don't know if you can see them on the camera, I don't think you can, the little grills at the back. It's got a really nice feel to it. And below that, we've got the Groove Synthesis third wave. And again, this just looks really cool. I did have the desktop version or the rack version of it, but it didn't have as cool a paint job. And I saw this in Super Booth and I was just absolutely stunned by it, fell in love with it. I love the sounds, I love what it can do. It's virtual analog and it's a PPG on steroids with lots more than you can do with a PPG. Got lots more envelopes in there and the effects, 4 parts. So yeah, the Super 8 has the waves in it, so the digital waves, but it's only got 32 waves and you're not scannable in there, whereas this has got classic 8-bit waves in there and it's got really high-res waves as well, and you can create your own waves on it. Just such a flexible, amazing synth that. Below that is the Juno 60. It needs no introduction, really, does it? I did have, or have still got in the cupboard, the Juno 106, and I thought that anyone saying that the Juno 60 and 6 sounded better than the 106 were nuts until I got one, and there's something just brighter and brasher than the 106. And this one in the back here, just so you can see there, we've got this little connector. It's got the DCB connector in there, and that allows me to MIDI that via USB, which is really cool. So that's MIDI'd up as well. Next to the third wave is the Waldorf M. This has all those gritty 8-bit waves, or the PPG waves. So it's a bit like a Microwave 1 and a brand new microwave at the same time. If I hadn't have bought this and had already got the third wave, I might not have bought the microwave, but there's something, I call it a microwave, but there's something about this. It's got a really nice quality to it, and it's got that A6 bug in there, which really adds some madness. The A6 bug is where there's like an overload in the mixer and there's like a truncation error or something, and it just gives you these really nasty, beautifully nasty tones. Below that, I've got the Synclavier Regen, and this is basically in storage on the shelf. It's not something I'd stand here and program because there's so much in there. I'd take this off and throw it on the desk. Same as the filter bank that I've got sitting behind there as well. This is an absolutely stunning bit of kit. I've got 2 of these. They're just, I've done a couple of videos on them. They're well worth checking out. If you want to take a sound, mangle it and make it sound spectacularly dirty or spectacularly beautiful, this thing is knockout. So here's the pair. You can never have enough Sherman filter banks. They are wonderful. But there was a reason I got the second one as well, because if you look there, we can see there's additional text underneath the number 2, and this is an upgraded version of it, basically a newer version, and it makes its own sounds. You get all sorts of weird squelches and stuff from it without having to have a keyboard or any synthesizer. And my YouTube channel homepage has got a track, or the main track for that was made with this. I think there's a few drum sounds and everything else comes from the Sherman. Moving over to shaky cam then, I've got the Korg remake of the MS-20 sitting next to CS-15. I've actually got a CS-10 as well, and my mate's got a CS-30, so I got that to make videos with, basically, once I've done the videos. I think I've made one with that already. Below that, I've got the Prophet VS, and I've bought the stereo pin controller for this because it is a bit of a nightmare to control, but it does stuff that other things can't do. I've put the waveforms for this in the third wave. I've put them in lots of other stuff. Actually, I've put them in the Super 6 as well. But the Prophet VS does stuff that other synths cannot do, with that modulating between all 4 different waveforms. So next to that, again, I've just got another little Eurorack skiff. Again, that comes out every now and then. I'm trying to work out how to create a nice live set using the Eurorack. So that's rack 1, just sitting behind there. You see my System 8. And I've been meaning to make a video with this. I've done one with the Jupiter 8, but I have got the Promars, I've got the Jupiter 4 over there, I've got an SH101, JX3P, Juno 106, and the Juno 6 and 60 that I could put up against this because it's got all those models in here, just to show how amazing this is. And at some point, I will be selling pretty much all that vintage stuff and just keeping hold of this because, yes, it's not quite the same, but for those sounds and for the space saving, this is a spectacularly good, if a bit unattractive looking synth, although some people do like it, and I suppose in the dark with the green flashing lights, it's not bad. On the next track there, we've got the Pro 1, it needs no introduction. This is CV and gate controlled by the Gridlock 2, as I said earlier. It can be, or you can turn it off if you want. It's got a really nice Fatar keyboard on it. There's a guy, I can't remember if he's in Germany, Austria or Sweden, has these Fatar keyboards that work on things like the Pro 1 and on the Prophet 600. They've put one of his keyboards on that as well, and it just turns them into a new instrument. Old instruments, the worst bit about them is generally the keys. They're not very good. That's the Orbachs. The Promars, they're just sort of really clicky and clacky, and they just get a bit springy feeling. Put a new keyboard on and it just brings an old synth back to life. Next to that, we've got the PWM Mantis, and this is a really weird thing because it doesn't look very spectacular. You know, they save money by not making it in a great big enclosure and doing the sort of UDO thing and making it look like a big sexy instrument. But it sounds really nice. It's got that Oscar heritage, and it just makes you approach things in a different way, which is what I really like about these things. I've got their Malevolent as well. That's the little sort of a semi-modular thing, and that's absolutely nuts. I've got it in a little box over there, and that comes out to play every now and then, along with a few other interesting little bits. And almost like I'm trying to prove a point, since I got the Nina out to do this shot, it's now replaced the analog rhythm next to the Super 8. So back to the rack then, and we got the Take 5, which I've realised I don't really need. Really nice synth. Replaced the P6 with it, but don't need it any longer really, I've noticed. And that's sitting snugly next to the OB6. It does fit next to the OB6, which is another reason for getting it actually, or for swapping it out with the Prophet 6. Sometimes space and size really do matter. But when I got the OB6, I was completely bowled over by it. Really love it, but I did get the X8 as well, so I don't actually need both of them, but I can't bring myself to sell it, but I will do at some point because it really is a bit pointless having the both of them. Next to that is the Vermona Perfourmer Mark II, and that's a beautiful thing to just stand and fiddle. It's a sort of waist height, so I can just stand for hours playing with that. Below there, I've got the Prophet 5, which is now the Prophet 10. I did a little upgrade. Come down so you can see me. I did a little upgrade video of this from a 5 to a 10. It's a shame it doesn't say 10 on it, I suppose, but yeah. So with that, I really don't need the Tick 5 as well. And with this, I really don't need the OB6. So this whole rack does need a little bit of organisation. Next to the Prophet 5 is the Leipzig V3 from Analog Solutions. And this is like an instant techno-y vibe machine. This little patinator they've got down here sends CV to the oscillators and to the filter, and you can adjust the amount it sends it to each of the individual VCOs. So you get all sorts of weird and wonderful things out of it, and it sounds meaty and nasty. Below them, the GS Music E7, and this just sounds absolutely wonderful. It's not plugged in, it's just sitting there, basically, not in storage, but just on a shelf. I'll use this, I'll set it up next to the computer and sit there and tweak it, so it doesn't have to be plugged in. It would be nice, actually, to plug it in next to one of the synths over here, but it's quite wide, so you can't get it next to a large synth. It could maybe go up here. Next to the E7 is the PolyBrute, and this is, it's down here because the app works so well, you don't actually need to play with the keyboard itself. So it's just ended up staying on the bottom shelf. And below that, I've got lots of effects pedals and things. What have we got in here? I think this is let's try and get one out. The Roland SH4D, Zen Delay, and the Otto Biscuit TR606. So these are things that I won't be using every day. That'll just come out occasionally. Poly M tracker. This one's got the Speculous Tempest and the Eventide Rose. Rack number 3 then, I got the Prophet 600. I got this really quite cheap, and as I say, I've replaced the key bed on it. I got it just to have a little play with it, and I sort of fell in love with it, so that's staying. Next I got the Tempest. Tempest, I've not really used that for years, come to think of it. It's a great little drum machine, but it's more of a synth that's got very drum-orientated capabilities, shall we say. It's just a bit complex to use, and it could have done with a bit more memory, really, because you start doing some nice things and you find you about that in memory. Below that, Jupiter 4. That's just come back, as I say, from repair. Beautiful synth, but I think once I've put it up against the System 8 and done like a Jupiter special, I'll be getting rid of that. Below that, I've got the Minimoog. That's the 2016 reissue. It's a pain in the backside at the minute because the external power supply broke a few weeks ago, and you can't replace them unless you buy 99 of them and like £80 each or something insane all they were. So yeah, I've got a mate, Mike Gorman, who I borrowed the Elector Formant from a couple of weeks ago. That was on all over the channel. I was doing did a gig with that in Synth East, and he's looking at, well, he's already got the power board built, just trying to put a little case on it now. So I'm going to do a video showing that actually, because there's a couple of ways of doing it, some more expensive than others, but we'll get the schematics and stuff up. So if you have got one and it is broken, we'll help you out, so to speak. Below that, I've got the Voyager, and the Voyager was the first synth I bought after trying to go all in the box. It didn't quite work for me. I put a bid on that on eBay and won, and couldn't believe I'd won it actually, £1,500, which was pretty good even at the time. And I've just got that, played with it, and then yeah, back to the hardware. Next to that, I've got some drum machines. Got the 909, the TR1000. Below that, I've got the 808. So just done a video looking at the TR1000 versus the 909. You know, do I need all three? Of course I don't need all three. I don't need any of them. So the TR1000 versus the 808 or the 909, it's a different machine than any of them. I was thinking about using it live, but do I need that live, or can I use the TR8S? Got that in a box down there. Do I really need the analog circuits in that for the price as well, or do I just stick to the TR8S? So there is another little comparison video I'll put up soon. Underneath that, I've got the Fusebox from Analog Solutions. Again, these things from Analog Solutions, they've just got a life of their own. You start playing, you don't use them every day, but once you start playing with them, they just take you to places that you couldn't do or you wouldn't easily get to on other things. So it's not something that's really repeatable. I wouldn't like to use them live and try and get those patinators and all those knobs in exactly the right position. But maybe I'll give it a go actually, because it is a really cool thing. Below them, I've got a couple of racks. This has got the Audio Fuse 16 rig, which again is a relatively new addition to the studio. And we've got the 8 in and the 8 out on the ADATs as well. We've got all the synths you've just been looking at plugged into this. A lot of them are directly plugged into it. I've got 16 analog inputs and 8 ADATs, which gives us 24 inputs in total. The outputs are used for effects so that I can route, I'll show you on the computer in a minute, but I can route outputs to the effects so I can send things to send effects, and then I can just move the 808 out the way or put something on the desk and use the effects as you would on a mixing console. So all those things that are in all those boxes come out and they sit up there and they can get plugged in, and they get plugged in down here because everything goes to the patch bay as well. So I spent a lot of time working out what was going on in this patch bay, and I've got a big spreadsheet showing exactly how all that works so I don't forget. The Clarett Octopre isn't actually used in the studio. I use this for my videos. I've got a Scarlett and I use this when I need additional inputs. Below that, we've got the Wellspring, and this is an amazingly beautiful spring reverb. It's got modulation, it's got a filter in there with band pass, high pass, and low pass, and notch. It's got a delay, and you can just make all these beautiful, swirly, gorgeous tones with it. That's sort of hardwired in because it's too big to stick in one of the boxes. It just sits there, and it looks very cool as well. Next to that, with the Voyager sitting on top of it, we've got my other new rack, and this has got the Studio Electronics MIDI Mini V30, and this is an absolutely stunningly good sounding thing. It's an evolution from the MIDI Moogs that they used to make, and they had the innards of real Moogs, and they used to make them rack mount. And this is now sort of an evolution of that, as I say. And it's got lots of nice CV connections. Again, I've got a video on this, and it's absolutely wonderful. Down here, got the MKS80, the SuperJupiter, and that's waiting for my Jupiter versus Jupiter versus Jupiter versus Jupiter demonstration. This isn't wired in yet. I did wonder about what to wire into these things, and I was going to wire this one in with the, again, another retroactive controller. But I went for this instead, for now at least. That may go and sit on the other side of the studio at some point. A bit of rejigging to do, or this might. And if you're wondering what that is, that's just a bit of storage for an old drum pad that comes out occasionally. This brings us to Synth Rack 4, the Odyssey and the Prodigy, and their CV connected to the gridlock. Below that, I've got the Le Pièce de Résistance, the Jupiter 8. He's stroking it very affectionately. And then below that, my sort of main keyboard is the Core Guest V1. It's got a really nice action on this. Had this for years, had this since it came out. And behind that, you may just be able to see some keys, and that's my Juno 2. Again, that's controlled by the retroactive controller that I can just put over there, so I don't even have to touch the keys on this. In fact, here it is, and it sits on top of the machine normally, sort of in storage, as it were. Just sits on top of the keyboard in where the music stand holes are. But that gives you full access to all the parameters on the Juno 2. Again, video on that a couple of years back. Fabulous, amazing bit of kit that really does bring the Juno 2 to life. Next up then, we're almost there. I've got my main 19-inch rack. This is just sitting on the top of it. The vocoder, the SVC 350, beautiful vocoder that sounds amazing. I don't use this anymore. I should get rid of that really, don't need it. Now I've got the gridlock up and running. Studio Electronics ATCX, that's got a 303 board in it, or filter I should say. 12 dB Oberheims style and the Minimoog style filter. Really nice bit of kit, but again, don't really use that much anymore, but I need to do a video on it before I get rid. And then the Oberheim Matrix 1000. On the top here, I've got the stereo pink controller for that, but I've bought this for the Prophet VS, and I've got an overlay for it, and I've got downloaded the software to use this on the Prophet VS, because there's plenty of software solutions to edit the Matrix 1000. But that does bring me down to the main rack. You've seen the 8816. Below that, I've got the Apollo, and this has been my main audio interface for years. And using the UAD console app, and I'll show this in a second, you can load in all the UAD plugins and use it live as a full-on mixer. So you've got insert effects, you've got send effects. So yeah, I don't need a mixer if I've got this to bring in up to 16 things live. And across the way, we've got the audio fuse that brings in another 16 analog and another 8 digital. So that's 40 channels of input I've got. And then below that, I've got the Eventide Eclipse, and I don't really use this anymore. It was an amazing thing. I remember the Sound on Sound reviewer there saying, you know, it's as good as it gets. And it is. It's absolutely fabulous. But there's just so many things you can use inside your DAW these days that don't emulate this exactly, but just the way all the algorithms work. You know, you're using just these 4 buttons to access everything. And it just, you know, it's a bit of a pain. Although I did set up MIDI control of this using the Access virus of all things, which is here, and it's quite heavy to hold actually, compared to a lot of things. But this can control stuff via sysx. So this whole panel that you've got can send out different sysx messages. So I did use this before I got the retroactive to control the Juno 2, using this to control Eventide Eclipse and my Mogafogers and stuff. Pretty cool. Below that then, I've got the X filter and the Xpresser from Alicia. These are both fabulous sounding, sort of cut down versions almost of the mastering gear, because you can't access the left and the right controls. They are just stereo. But the electronics in here is class A. These are amazing machines. And they weren't that expensive considering what you get for them and how flexible they are. So I love these two. And these are in the signal chain for the 8816. We've got the insert mix here, so we can blend the insert mix. So we can do that sort of New York compression style thing. And on the patch bay, that's all normaled so that when I bring this in, it all just flows through these two, or you can access them individually. Below that, the Thermionic Culture Vulture. This adds a bit of drive, bit of tape saturation to just completely insane distortions, but just brings things to life if you need them to. It's a shame it doesn't have a parallel blend on it like the UAD version does, and I think the Arturia version does as well. The UAD version is absolutely spectacularly close to this actually, so don't actually use that as much anymore because I can just stick things through the UAD. Or I can stick this through the parallel processing, like I was saying about the Odyssey's. I can do that down here. So insert in to insert return, then normaled into the 8816. Can you see that? But I can bring anything in to that signal chain. So that's what I'll do with that. Down here, I've got really just storage for some more Euro rack units, but it's in here because I've got the VTX1, which is the breakout box for the Gridlock 2. So that's that's the Prodigy, that's the Odyssey, that's the Promars, that's the Pro 1. And these, actually a couple of these go through to that patch bay on the other side of the studio below the audio fuse. So I can send CVs out of this to that patch bay and send them wherever I like. So I could send them to Euro rack and stuff like that if I want as well. It doesn't have to be just those old synths. But by sending these into that other patch bay means that it's just super flexible. I can plug anything in, any CV into this as well. And you can see here how often I have been changing these. That's only just been recently stuck on just to remind me what's happening. These are from that other patch bay on the other side of the room. This is the main output from the audio fuse. I really have to make this a bit neater though, because it's a bit of a mess. There's a fair amount of stuff in here then, and a fair amount of boxes. I do have cupboards with stuff like all the little sort of modules that you often see on the videos. So they just come out as and when I need them. And in case you're wondering, these orange panels on the back, they're for sound dampening, and I got those. There was a media centre at Liverpool University was closing down years ago. So I bought these things that were in the control room. They're really quite thick. They're about this deep. They're aluminium sheets with rock wool inside and little sort of holes in them. I don't know, but they're really heavy and they really do work a treat. But I thought I bought 8 of them or 12 of them that were in the control room, and I got an email or a phone call back then asking when I was going to collect the rest of them, and I'd apparently bought 128 of them from this huge sort of TV studio. So I don't know whatever happened to them. They must have gone in a bin or in a tip, but days before eBay. But yeah, so these come with me all over the place. I can probably get better things now over there. I've got those sort of flatter panels, but they're nowhere near as good as these things here. So these really do help the room. On the floor, I've got the sort of obligatory studio rug, but no other real bits of attenuation, no bass attenuators or anything like that. I did have a big sub in here at one point, but it just didn't work. It rattled the room. It was too big. There's the main control hub, as it were. I use the Sub 37 as my main controller, and, you know, because it's got some knobs on, you can control lots of things in the studio with it. Got the Softube Console on over there. You can do all that sort of stuff with that, which is quite cool. Over here, I've got this little grot box. I've actually bought a second one of these. It's called Little Paper Cone, and bought the second one because it came in for sale. I'd only got the one on a... Nice to have the two of them so that you've got something that you can hear it like it might sound on a small speaker. Don't really need them these days. And then I got this and realised my amplifier only had one channel working anyway, so this is just sort of sat there doing nothing at the minute. Next to this on the desk, I've got IK Multimedia's Arc Studio. So yeah, I don't really need the grot box. I can do everything I want with these, really. Taking a look at the interface software and how the whole thing's pulled together from both sides of the studio. There's a little setup for the Softube display, but if we come to the MIDI destination here, you can see we've got MIDI keyboards, and we've got the Prodigy, Pro 1, Odyssey and Promars. So we can just click them on their CV, and the computer doesn't know as far as it's concerned. That's a MIDI channel, so that's brilliant. This is the UAD console. So we have the 8 analog inputs, and on each of those inputs we can put insert effects. So what we've got there, the Dimension D. So obviously there's a whole load of stuff you can do there. It's a little bit addictive when you first get the UAD stuff, so you got to be careful. I don't know if I own all these. Oh, there you go. So I own, I've had this for years. I'm thinking I'll only ever buy one or two things. I've got those over the years, but they do have sales on, so mainly everything I've bought there's been about a tenner, I think. Anyway, it's really useful because it is basically a mixing console. Go into the inserts over here. So these are your send effects, and there's the emulation of the AMS reverb. Could put maybe on the other one. Let's throw the space echo. So a reverb and delay on the sends, and you can cue those to listen to them, all the rest of it. It is basically a mixing console. And then this is the Arturia. So on the Arturia, you can see we've got the OB6. And you look at this as 33, 35, 37. They're the audio input channels on the Mac, because the UAD goes up to 32 because you can add a few ADATs to that as well. So that got pretty confusing when I was first trying to work out where everything was coming in. But yeah, Waldorf M, third wave, Juno 60, Super 8. And then over here on the ADAT inputs, the Prophet 5, the Pro 1, the Mantis. Then I've come to the mixer in there. I can send things through the auxiliaries. So auxiliary 1 and auxiliary 2, they've been mapped to analog out 3 and 4, auxiliary 1, auxiliary 2, analog out 3 and 4 over here on the left. So there's the analog out, and that will go into whatever effect I've got. I should have left a few of these blank in retrospect, so I could bring back anything I'd patched out through the auxiliaries back into this, but it doesn't really matter. They can go into the UAD. But yeah, this whole system works quite well. It looks quite complex, but once I've got my head around it, it's quite simple. And so here's the spreadsheet for the single patch bay underneath the audio fuse. So I've got and I've put the colour of the cables in there as well, so I can see what's happening if I've ever got to go around the back. It's a nightmare of cabling around there. So yeah, if I did that again, I would have more inputs that were just blank, so I could just plug anything I liked into the audio fuse. But having said that though, right next to that, there's a patch bay that sends stuff to the Apollo, so it doesn't really make much difference. But yeah, there's lots of bits and bobs that are in boxes and lying around and in cases, all being perfect with a much bigger room and a huge desk to plug everything directly into. You know, have everything out, but it's just not practical. So I've got synths in a cupboard, I've got boxes of small little modules in a cupboard, and I've got lots of stuff in boxes around the place. But because I do the videos over there, everything will be coming out of boxes anyway all the time as I'm trying to find new things to play with and different combinations of things. Anything else to look at? Maybe, I don't know. Yeah, on top of these acoustic panels, they've just become like shelves. Things like, again, little modules and stuff. Play all day, play fader, metronome, the MIDI cake art. Over there, I've got a few Roland boutiques. Over there, I've got some more little tiny synthesizers that come out and go on the table for the videos every now and then. But yeah, nothing's like definitely in a specific place for years. The only thing that's been in the same place for years and years is the Korg SV1. Everything else seems to move. Oh, and the and the Neve 8816. So yeah, constant state of flux, but generally that's how it works. So I hope you enjoyed that. I hope that was of interest to somebody somewhere. A few people did ask me, so I thought it was worthwhile putting together. Too many synths for a start. I really do need to think about rationalizing things. So things like the System 8 and getting rid of a few of the Roland vintage units is something I'm planning as well. And I've got other things that I want to bring in here and that I've got in the cupboards. Things like the AJ8 synths. Is it called the Minimoog mod or something like that? It's the keyboard and it's got the Moog modules in it, and it's an absolutely fantastic thing. It just sounds marvelous. I'd like to have that somewhere where I can just stand and play with it. Maybe I don't use the axe as much. Maybe it'll go up there. But yeah, so I'm always thinking about what's going to go where and how I'm going to use it best and what makes it a fun room to be in. So thanks for staying to the very end. I really do hope you enjoyed that, and I will see you next time.